South Korea, the fourth largest economy on the entire continent of Asia, and the 11th largest in the world. A pretty remarkable fate for a country of only 51 million people. By comparison, the average population of top 15 economies in the world is 265 million. In fact, only Canada and historical superpower Spain have lower populations and sit above South Korea on the GDP scale. It is even more impressive considering war broke out just 5 years after Korea attained independence from Japan after 36 years of occupational rule. When the world was yet to recover from World War II, the Korean War took the lives of a further 5 million people. At one point, American five-star general and commander-in-chief of the United Nations Command for the Korean War, Douglas MacArthur remarked, "This country has no future. This country will not be restored even after 100 years. South Korea was in ruins. Destroyed and devastated. It was a dire case of extreme poverty." In 1954, right after the war, the average income for a South Korean was just $64. In that same year, the average American earned $2,412. 37 times more than a South Korean. Today, the average American makes just twice as much as a South Korean. How did this nation flip the page, and flee itself from the shackles of poverty in such a short period of time, relative to what other nations have been able to accomplish? Well, there was a lot of foreign aid involved. Right after the war, South Korea's government budget was financed 90% by foreign aid. A very scary position to be in, for any country. A military government soon took over, and it came up with some pretty sound economic plans. But as the government did its part, a big reason for South Korea's recovery, success, and ascendance to economic supremacy, is down to a few large industrial conglomerates. Each of these conglomerate is referred to as a chaebol. To be clear, these corporations were not new. Some had existed for several decades, but were not really in an environment where they could thrive. There was the war, the Japanese occupation, the poverty, the poor economic policies, etc. In the 60s, however, the government developed a blueprint for industrializing the country. This started a deep cooperation with the conglomerates. The political will, and sense of urgency to turn South Korea into a major industrial player, exporting more and importing less, was the one thing the large conglomerates needed on their way to global domination. And it was not all talk on the part of the government. These conglomerates were encouraged to borrow from foreign creditors, with the government guaranteeing the loans. Foreign loans borrowed by the government were even at times rumored to have been diverted to the conglomerates, from their intended purpose. It was a true and strong belief that this was the right way to grow their economy. Companies that were initially making light products and consumer goods, were now empowered to enter the major leagues, and start manufacturing heavy machinery, defense products, and chemicals. By the 1980s, the conglomerates had grown so big, that they single-handedly turned South Korea's trade deficit into a surplus. At this time, they had also outgrown government assistance. When the 90s came, South Korea was considered an industrialized nation, having risen from the ashes just 40 years prior. For perspective, children born at the height of the Korean War saw South Korea transform from a third world nation to a first world nation, while they were still in their prime working age. Very few countries have ever achieved this, before or since. The 5 biggest of these chaebols are Samsung, Hyundai, SK Group, LG, and Lotte. You might know this already, but Samsung is the largest and the most profitable. It is also the oldest, having been founded back in 1938. Samsung started as a small trading company exporting fruits, dried fish, and noodles. Over the decades, it diversified into almost everything: processing, insurance, defense, retail, shipbuilding, construction, etc. Today, we mostly know Samsung as the largest mobile phone maker in the world, but its other businesses are pretty impressive on their own. For instance, Samsung Heavy Industries is the 7th largest shipbuilder in the world. Samsung Engineering appears in the top 20 largest construction companies in the world. And Samsung Insurance also appears in the top 20 largest insurance companies in the world. Samsung also owns an advertising agency that is one of the world's largest. The electronics segment of the company is, however, still the biggest. Alone, it had sales of $222 billion in 2018. The success of the company has brought a lot of wealth for the founding family. Today, Samsung is run by second and third generation members of the Lee family. And this has elevated them to be the second richest family in Asia. They are worth more than $40 billion, according to Forbes. LG is another of the big conglomerates dominating in South Korea. It was founded back in 1947, and is today not just one of the largest companies in the Asian country, but one of the largest in the world. The initials L and G initially stood for Lucky Gold's Tower, but that has since been rebranded to Life's Good. Today, LG has various subsidiaries, including electronics, display, chemicals, solar energy, healthcare, etc. In 2018, the company reported revenues upwards of $147 billion. The role of Hyundai in the development of South Korea cannot also go unappreciated. This mega conglomerate has over the years split into various companies, all bearing the Hyundai name. These include Hyundai Motors, Hyundai Steel, Hyundai Heavy Industries, Hyundai Engineering, Hyundai Capital, etc. If all these were merged into a single company today, Hyundai would likely be the biggest conglomerate in South Korea, overtaking Samsung. Without these massive companies that have grown to become global behemoths, South Korea would be a totally different country today. The large GDP of the country is beholden to them, and they employ hundreds of thousands of people. Economists will remain divided on whether this is the right way to develop a country and lead it to prosperity, but there is no denying it has worked in South Korea. Remember to subscribe and click that bell button to receive notifications as soon as we post a new video.